Okay. Hello, everybody. We got a bunch of people waiting already. Welcome to another episode of the Primal Edge Health Stream. I've got a very special guest today. I have from the one of the co-founders of the Weston A. Price Foundation, a very accomplished published author and researcher and educator concerning the importance of animal foods and of fat in the human diet. I am honored to speak to Sally Fallon Morell. How you doing today, Sally?
Hi, thanks. I'm fine. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, really, really excited to talk to you. Super glad that you could make it. I think I don't know, I would have to say that your book Nourishing Traditions was one of the most influential books early on in our family's journey to take our health back and to help raise our children on a nourishing diet. So I want to thank you for all the work you've done, and maybe we can start from the beginning and give the audience a little bit of background on where you're coming from and how you got interested in all this nutrition stuff.
Yeah, I sort of don't know how I got here. It's like the universe just pushed me here. But I had the idea of writing a cookbook that would put Weston Price's ideas into a format that was more understandable than his book, although his book is a wonderful read. And so I just kind of plunged in and did the book. Fortunately, I met Mary Enig along the way, who became my co-author. She was a lipids specialist, so we could make sure it was really accurate. And she shared my concerns about the demonization of animal fats and
Mm.
especially putting children on low fat diets or wrong fat diets and how that adversely affected them for their whole lives. So we published the book and then we founded the Weston A. Price Foundation. And, people think I live this glamorous life, but really it's mostly at my desk, just making sure we get our journal out and get the information to people that they need.
Yeah, well, what about all the billions of dollars of the meat and dairy industry money that the vegans say you've got just rolling in? I mean, that you'd think you'd be
Yes,
flying on private jets, hanging out with
right.
Tony Robbins and stuff, but it seems
Right.
like
No, we are against getting your food from an industry. So we don't take any money from the dairy industry or the meat industry. We think these industries have actually ruined these foods. And I'm not against industry. We need industry for cars and airplanes and computers. That's fine, but we shouldn't have industry in our food because when you make this food production so large and industrial and want to make money on it, you have to sacrifice quality. And, we have the knowledge today, we have the kinds of technologies that can get the most nutrient dense food to us that we need. But, you have to know what you're doing and you have to be willing to pay for that kind of food.
absolutely, yeah. No, we've been talking about a lot on this channel about the transition from family-based farms, from animal agriculture to industrial agribusiness, right? This kind of shift in the
Exactly.
global economy towards this model of globalization, corporate globalization, being a major vehicle for the consolidation of the food supply in the hands of very, very few large corporations that have no respect for borders, have no respect for human health, and we see a
No,
lot of
yeah, no respect for their workers, no respect for what they're putting in the food. And in the case of milk, the industrialization of milk, which is the processing, the pasteurization, now it's ultra pasteurization, the homogenization. Um, this has totally ruined nature's perfect food. So one of the first things we did was set up a campaign for real milk. We advocate, we try to make it possible for people to get raw, uh, unhomogenized milk from pastured cows. And we've been very successful in this. When we started, there were 27 states that allowed this, no more than 40 sources in the whole United States. And now there's thousands of sources, and we're up to 43 states now that allow
wow.
the farmer to provide raw milk.
Wow, yeah, it seems like there are many parts of the world. Canada and Australia are also very strict on this whole anti-raw milk thing. When did all this start? When did this whole demonization, in your words, the demonization of animal foods, which is just so succinctly put, because that's what we're seeing, an intense demonization of animal foods and just family agriculture, small agriculture in general, and the replacement with junk food, seed oils, and all this. When did this start?
Well, the demonization of raw milk started back in the early 1900s with this push towards pasteurization, and they knew that the raw milk was more nutritious. That was obvious from early studies, but so they had to use the public safety angle and just
Mm.
started to say that it was dangerous to drink raw milk when people have been drinking raw milk for thousands of years. So the demonization of animal foods, all animal foods, is more recent, I think. Up until maybe 20 years ago, vegetarianism was just a kind of fringe thing that you did if you were into city yoga or something like this. But
Yeah.
now it's become a way of saving the planet, stopping global warming, uh, giving us good health, making us more spiritual, better
Hmm.
citizens. And
Yeah.
every argument in the book is put out there to make people not eat animal foods, eat plant foods. And what people don't realize is that the profit on a plant based diet, which is basically based on commodities, soy,
Right.
peas, as you one, wheat,
Patented,
powdered
right? Like
milk.
a lot of these seeds being patented, the actual life
Yeah,
forms being patented, and
yeah.
then
But
not to mention genetically modified and all the glyphosate. I mean, it's atrocious.
well, and the profit is so much higher on these
Yeah.
foods than on a steak. There's not a lot of profit in a steak. My son's a chef, and he says, Mom, when you order a steak at a restaurant, 50% of what you pay goes into the food. If you order a muffin in a restaurant, only 10% of what you pay goes into the food, and all the rest is profit for the restaurant. So they really want you to be eating muffins and not steaks. They want you to eat cakes, not steaks,
There you go.
because
We got the steaks. The steak.
right there you go. Only it's backwards. But
Uh,
oh, okay, okay. But it's all about the bottom line and about the profit.
yeah. Yeah. So pasteurization. I mean, this is a big topic nowadays. A lot of people are afraid of raw milk. We've been giving our kids raw milk. Our daughter's been drinking raw milk since she was a baby. Our son's been drinking it. Well, not a baby. She had it first when she was maybe 9 months old. But our son's been having raw milk, raw cream, raw dairy since. I don't know, we actually followed your principles from your book when we for our second kid, our son, his first food was egg yolk, some raw egg yolk, some liver, then soft fish and slow cooked meat, stuff like that. So we kind of use the principles that the Weston A. Price Foundation promotes. And we've found that it's just been incredibly beneficial for their health. And there's somebody in the chat right now, the peasant's daughter, through a $10 Canadian dollar super chat. Thank you so much for the donation. Says, I just want to sincerely thank you, Sally. After my nearly 2 years of veganism, it was Weston A. Price Foundation principles that brought my physical and mental health back. Raw milk and cod liver oil in particular. So, I mean, there's a
Good.
lot of people who are benefiting from this. What the heck happened? Why did we start pasteurizing milk? And what could be
Well,
worse for milk than this?
it's very interesting. The first mandatory pasteurization laws were passed in, I believe it was 1913, kind of an eventful year, in New York. And the committee that passed these laws said, we're going to do pasteurization, not because it's healthier. We know that raw milk is perfectly healthy and safe, but because it will cost us less to inspect the large dairies rather than all these small dairies. And they kind of do the
Mm.
inspections themselves anyway. So it was a cost thing. And a few years ago, our inspector, we produce raw cheese and raw milk on our farm, and we produce our raw milk as pet milk. But she said to me, and we were good friends, she said, Sally, we just can't afford to inspect all these little dairies, the kind that you want to do. It would be way beyond our budget. So she was giving me exactly the same reason that they were giving, 100 years ago for why you want to pasteurize. It's just more efficient for the inspectors.
Yeah.
Now, today we have technologies that make inspection almost unnecessary. We have rapid testing for coliform and standard plate count and somatic cell count. And, our inspector comes once a month and takes a sample to test those things. But we actually test them every day on the farm, and it's very inexpensive. And I would think that a good program would be we just upload those every day to the state, and
Right.
they don't have to come out and take tests or inspect or anything. So the technology is there now to actually keep tabs on all these little farms. And I actually am an advocate for inspection. I know there's people in our movement who don't want any inspectors, don't want any of that. But I think inspection is a good idea as long as it's carried out by people who believe in you and who
Hmm.
believe in what they're doing. But
Yeah.
it was always an economic reason. It had nothing to do with health. And I think now that we know more about raw milk and how amazing it is, we're seeing the absolute waste and folly of 100 years of pasteurization.
Now, what do you think about lactose intolerance? A lot of people believe that they're sensitive to dairy, even non-lactose intolerant people. A lot of us um, have come to believe that we might be sensitive to dairy, and some people, when they pull it out, they feel much better. Is there a difference between raw dairy and pasteurized dairy in some of these
Yes,
cases?
absolutely. We did a survey of individuals diagnosed by a doctor as lactose intolerant, and we
Mhm.
found that 82% of those could drink raw milk without any problem whatsoever.
Wow.
So I call it pasteurization intolerance. And I think most people are intolerant to pasteurized milk. I don't know many people who drink a big glass of pasteurized milk every morning. Might
What is
put
it
some
that what
milk.
is it that changes as far as the composition and the digestibility? Why is heating it up in the pasteurization process so detrimental for assimilation and digestion of dairy?
Yeah, and it's different for meat because meat actually becomes more digestible in a certain way when you cook it.
Hmm.
But the proteins in the enzymes and all that, the immune compounds in milk are three-dimensional, very fragile uh, amino acids, proteins, and they get all messed up, warped, and distorted when they're heated. And your body then says, "Emergency, emergency! This is a foreign protein coming in. These are all these foreign proteins coming in," and has to mount an immune response. And every single vitamin and mineral in raw milk has a special enzyme or carrier protein to make sure it's 100% absorbed. No other food is like that.
Hmm.
And I've heard people say, well, the levels of vitamins and minerals in milk are low anyway, so it doesn't matter. But if 100% is being absorbed, they don't need to be that high because you're getting everything. So you ruin all that instant nutrition for the growing child. You ruin the immune system compounds, the protective compounds. They're all ruined, and then your body has to try to deal with this to make the enzymes for assimilation and so forth.
So it goes beyond just the live bacteria. There's living enzymes in milk as well that help to
Oh,
digest.
absolutely. Yeah. It's you take a food that's highly assimilable, highly absorbable, easy to digest with numerous health benefits and turn it into something that's extremely difficult to digest and highly allergenic.
Yeah, I mean it's a shame because it seems like raw milk is much more expensive in the United States, especially. Where I live, nobody pasteurizes milk. I mean, it's for the mass-produced stuff that they sell in the cities. Yeah, there's pasteurization, ultra pasteurization. Industrial seed oils are everywhere, all over Latin America as well. But raw milk is readily available. People wouldn't imagine pasteurizing the milk. They just drink it raw. They make cheeses out of it raw. Sometimes they heat it up to make dishes and stuff, but the pasteurization thing in the as far as the countryside is unheard of. What would advice be to people who are maybe in areas where it's difficult to get raw milk or illegal? Are there ways around this? You mentioned something about pet food.
Yeah, that's what we
Yeah,
do. We sell it as pet milk. I would go to our website, realmilk.com, which lists sources in every state and even states where it's illegal to sell it. It's there coming across the border. And we also have an international list as well. You might want to send us something about Ecuador that we could post
cool,
on realmilk.com.
cool.
By the way, going back to the processing of milk, what they really want to do and what's happening now in, I would think, places like Latin America, they import the bags of powdered milk, skim milk. First, they take off the cream and they use that to make ice cream because there's a big profit margin in ice cream.
Mm,
Then they powder the skim milk and put that in these huge bags and ship it all over the world. And then they reconstitute it with vegetable oils.
Oh,
Yeah, I know. It's totally gross. Yeah.
yeah, it's ridiculous. You see in the stores just these big plastic bottles of corn oil and stuff, and all the beers made from corn. I mean, traditionally, it's not like corn is bad. You know, they used to make a fermented drink from corn called chicha here.
Yeah.
Those they still make, and that it's kind of like a slightly more alcoholic kombucha. It's kind of sweet, and these are supposedly healthy gut flora feeding tonics, but the oil, the production of corn oil and the seed oils, this seems to be kind of the bane of our health crisis, doesn't it?
Well, my belief is that the number one cause of the health crisis is these industrial seed oils replacing the animal fats. And especially in the diets of children, see, children can't make cholesterol. They don't have all the equipment online yet. And um, that's why they absolutely need animal fats. And milk replacer for calves in the United States, the fourth ingredient is animal fat. But infant formula has no animal fat in it. It's no cholesterol in the formula.
Mm.
And the babies need the cholesterol for the formation of the brain, the nervous system, and the second brain, which is the gut, and also for hormone production. And if they're not getting this, their health is going to be severely compromised.
It's so interesting because I was looking at somebody tagged me in a photo today on Instagram of I mean, it was kind of shocking to see some of these pictures of vegan kids. You ever look up hashtag vegan kids on Instagram? Trigger warning. There's a lot of really malnourished looking children on these vegan diets these days. But something that was striking to me that I noticed was there's a lot more androgyny, and I'm not just saying like boy has long hair. I'm talking about like full on the parents call their kids gender neutral and stuff. You see this a lot in the vegan and vegetarian communities, and that's when
Yes.
you said
Yes.
hormones. I mean, it really nailed me right there because you see like the soy formula, the lack of animal fats possibly affecting the hormonal balance. We could be seeing a lot more of this kind of an androgyny in society because of this.
Well, all the sex hormones, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, DHEA, they're all made out of cholesterol.
Hmm.
And they all require vitamin A, which is a vitamin that we get from animal fats. And of course, we get cholesterol from animal fats. So I have a joke I tell in my talks. It's, let's see, how's it go? How are animal fats like sex? Well, the answer is they're both required for reproduction.
That's actually really good. That's a catchy one.
So
That
we
that
have,
sticks. That one sticks.
yeah, so we have very strong instincts for both. We have strong instincts to consume animal fats.
Yeah.
They make us feel good, they taste good. And when you start telling a child from very young fats are evil, should never eat fats, what do they get? They get food obsessions, eating disorders.
Mm.
They come to have a very difficult relationship with food. And it's the same if you tell them that sex is evil from a young age. What happens? You get, really weird obsessions
Yeah.
because something that's normal and natural and good, you're saying this is evil. So same with the animal fats. And we have young people today with these really weird relationships with food because you've told them that the part of food that tastes the best and that, nourishes them is evil.
It's kind of interesting. I was just thinking we talk about a lot of like broader issues on the channel here too. Um, when you look at it, the same cultural roots, the same people who are pushing the vegetable oils are also pushing for like lab grown babies and this whole transhumanist movement. It really this all ties in
Yeah.
powerfully. And
They're absolutely fixated on science.
mhm.
Uh, it's a totally different point of view. There's no spirituality in their outlook. They think that people who think there might be more to it than just matter are crazy.
Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly. Oh, it's just
Yeah.
then you read some of the papers from these people, and they say stuff like, "Well, love, a mother's love is just chemical reactions. We can replicate this in a laboratory and grow lab-grown babies." And these same people are using the same exact technology that would be used to grow ectogenetic babies to grow lab-grown meat now, and they want to give us
Oh,
hamburgers that
yeah.
are grown from cell cultures. And I'm thinking, all right, where's those ribbons of collagen and fat that you're going to see on like a
Yeah.
beautiful marbled
Right.
steak?
And the bones. Where are the bones? Yeah.
Marrow. You're
Yeah.
gonna grow me bone marrow in a laboratory or brain? Come on.
Yeah. I think these people are smoking things. I don't. I wrote I wrote a blog on lab meats and called it a bad investment. And now we've got the Impossible Burger, the Beyond Burger, and all this. These guys are going to lose their shirts, just like they lost their shirts on the earlier soy products. They make people feel terrible. They make them sick.
Yeah.
The people who actually like them are going to get too sick to eat anything. I mean,
You already
it's
see
not
it.
going
We
to
see
work.
it in the vegan population right now. I mean, in the vegetarian vegan population, you see a lot of malnourished kids and adults, really, really
And with
suffering.
serious digestive disorders.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
it's not going to work. And, you have to, you can't, Mother Nature bats last. You can't get away from her. And she's designed us, or we are designed, or we are made, whatever you want to say. We evolved, I don't care how you put it, to need certain nutrients to be
Yeah.
healthy.
And it's so
And
patently obvious right now. What I love about your work is how you bring it back to you don't go like the paleo route where you're speculating, well, what would we have eaten 10,000 years ago if we look at
yeah,
the bone fragments here? I never thought those were good arguments. I think Weston Price's book is a great one to point to of recent populations disconnected from the industrial foods and looking at the foods that they eat for nourishment and fertility and child rearing.
yes,
To me, I think this is so important, and I wanted to get into some of these fertility foods with you, the essential nature of fat and animal foods for fertility, and your research into this. Now, I know this is such a broad topic, and you've got encyclopedic knowledge on this, but maybe we can start with the fertility aspect. So,
okay.
what types of
I
foods are
just,
best for fertility, and how do we know this?
and this is what is so fascinating to me, because these people knew that certain foods were necessary to guarantee a healthy baby. And and science has completely validated this. So how did they know? They weren't scientists, but they had a different intuitive type of knowledge. And this is what the science man, has a real hard time with. But anyway, yeah, so they had special foods they ate um, at least 6 months before conception. So this would be grass-fed butter, liver was one, grass-fed raw milk, uh, fish eggs, certain types of seafood like fish heads, organ meats, marrow, egg yolks, another one. So when we look at these foods, what do we see in them? We see very high levels of the fat soluble vitamins A, D, and K. Now, I want to talk about vitamin A a minute, because vitamin A has been demonized for many years,
Mm.
and there's a new push to make us think that vitamin A is really toxic. And it is toxic if you're taking it as a supplement in your food or an additive to your food. But vitamin A is the concert masters of fetal development. So the embryo starts out as a stem cells, a collection of stem cells, and then uh, in a very rapid succession, the stem cells start to differentiate, and so they become heart cells or lung cells or whatever. And there's a signal that's given to those stem cells that says you become a heart cell, you become a lung cell. Okay, what is that signal? It is vitamin A.
Oh, wow.
Vitamin A is, yeah, it is vitamin A. It's the concert master of fetal development.
Mm-hmm.
So the first cells that are going to form are the heart cells. By the time that embryo is the size of a peppercorn, the heart is already starting to form. So before you even know that you're pregnant, that heart is starting to form. It's too late to build up your stores for the heart to form properly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the wisdom of eating these foods very rich in vitamin A, like liver, butter, egg yolks, fish heads, fish eggs. Now you can see it. You built up your stores so that when you got pregnant, the vitamin A was right there for that little concert master to tell your heart to form properly, to tell your lungs, your bones, everything to form properly.
Mm-hmm.
And we now know that vitamin A is supported by D and K, and these were the foods that contained all these vitamins.
So vitamin A, D, and K. These are Weston Price actually talked about these, but he didn't name vitamin K at the time, right? He called it the
He
activator
called it
X.
activator X. He didn't know exactly what it was. It was not in seafoods. It was in land fats. So it was not
Mm.
in the cod liver oil he gave. It was in the butter oil that he gave. And he found if he gave them both together, they worked really well. So I actually myself in the morning, I take my little fat soluble activator cocktail, which is a teaspoon of high vitamin cod liver oil,
Mm-hmm.
half a teaspoon of high vitamin butter oil, and now I've been adding to it half a teaspoon of emu oil. So I've got the fats of land, sea, and air. I think that's kind of neat.
There you go.
And I add warm water and stir and just gulp it down.
The emo is almost air, right? Because they can't really, not gonna
Oh,
fly.
that's right. They can't fly. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. So, yeah, the fast for fertility, there's something that's so powerful. I mean, I've had friends who accidentally conceived when they didn't want to, after getting on a more carnivorous diet, eating more meat and animal fats and less
Or going
grains.
going to France and eating pate,
There you go. Right? It's
and
accidental.
suddenly conceived. Yeah, right.
We've heard stories in our community too of just people who thought they were infertile. Suddenly they're pregnant, and it's oh shoot. You mentioned 6 months
Well,
as the period of time for
yeah.
giving a more nutrient dense diet. What do you think? So preconception 6 months, and then what about during pregnancy? Were there any fertility foods that some of these indigenous cultures focused on?
It was the same foods. It was
Mm,
absolutely the same foods that they were supposed to eat. I mean, they ate a lot of other foods too, but they needed these special fertility foods to have the pregnancy go well right through the pregnancy. And then, all the hormones that are involved in the birth process that cause the contractions, that open the cervix, and
mm,
all of this, they all require these same nutrients. So this is why these births were very easy in the traditional people because they were well nourished and they made the hormones at the right time to get the baby out quickly. But and
mm,
then through breastfeeding, and in the breastfeeding, it's interesting. Many cultures had a porridge, a grain porridge. I know in Peru and Ecuador, it was the quinoa
mm.
porridge. In other cultures, it was oat porridge or whatever. It was considered to be very important for having plenty of milk. So it's interesting that the grains come in at this point as being important. And the grains do, the carbohydrates support thyroid function. And also, the grains are soaked and properly prepared. They'll be full of the vitamins and minerals and so forth.
What I find interesting is there are a few of these cultures that were leaning towards more of a ketogenic diet, right? The Inuit being the most famous. The Hebrides Islands, pretty high animal food diet with some carbohydrate,
Oh,
but
yes.
most of these societies seem to not try and chase a state of ketosis. They would include carbohydrates when available, right?
Right. And then a very interesting culture that Dr. Price described in Western Canada, they had no carbs in their diet, no grains. And so in the spring, they ate the thyroid gland of the moose,
Hmm.
and that would allow them to get pregnant. So,
Hmm.
we do know that carbs are necessary for thyroid function.
Interesting. Interesting. So, we got somebody in the chat, a friend of mine. He threw a $5 super chat. Logical Link says he ate 100 pounds of liver in less than 18 months, but still had low serum retinol levels. I think that's kind of interesting. So he had a high liver intake, but still had low serum retinol levels. Have you ever seen anything like that, Sally?
I'm not a practitioner, but I can see why you would have a problem with that because the ruminant liver is really high in vitamin A and doesn't have a lot of vitamin D or vitamin K in it.
Okay.
And in Europe, I had a Hungarian friend who said to me, Sally, we ate liver in Hungary, but only if we cooked it in lard. We thought something
Mm,
was missing if we did not cook the liver in lard. So the lard is where your vitamin D is, and then the liver is the vitamin A.
there you go.
So,
So if
and
somebody didn't
there's
like
also
lard,
vitamin.
maybe butter would be a better way to go.
Yeah, but lard is better. Lard is better.
Okay.
But
Pastured lard, though.
bacon fat. Who doesn't like bacon fat? I mean,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you cook your liver in bacon fat. And there's also vitamin K in lard too. So the Eskimos were not just eating liver; they ate blood. Blood is full of vitamin D. They
Mm-hmm.
ate, um, you know, fish eggs. Fish eggs are loaded with vitamin D.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's one
and
of the
there were
foods that
there
they
were
would
sources.
use here in the Andes, and Weston Price put this in his book too. And you could still get these eggs, the angelote eggs. It's from this skate-like creature, and they would send that from the coast up here into the Andes, and they would trade for alpaca products and other botanicals and stuff, and they would use that for fertility. And
Exactly.
what's interesting is the iodine levels are very low here. Very low iodine in the soil, really washed out from just all the rains. It's like mud soil here, mud and rock and clay. And so they would use the coastal foods for iodine here that they traded for. Is that one that you
Well, and
focus
I'm
on much?
sure there were other things too, but yes, iodine is very important. The people in the Outer Hebrides
Hmm.
ate seaweed for iodine.
Yeah, interesting. So, okay, so we talked about raw
And
milk.
by the way, butter is a really good source of iodine.
Nice. So, all right, so
In fact,
vitamin D, vitamin A, vitamin K. Vitamin A, best source being liver. Vitamin D,
yeah.
you mentioned animal fat from pork, from pastured pork. Are there any other good sources of vitamin D?
Oh, plenty. Blood, seafood.
Hmm.
The Eskimos, of course, had land animals and seafood, egg yolks, butter. There's good sources.
Cool. And then K2. What are the best sources of vitamin K2 that people would be able
Well,
to
now
find?
K2, it's poultry fat. So, of course, we know emu oil is very high in K2, but chicken fat, duck fat, goose fat, chicken liver, duck fat, goose liver. And again, going back to the Inuit, they did a lot of birds. They ate a lot of birds. And
Interesting.
they had a dish where they put the birds in a what they call a poke, which is a bag made out of the stomach or the skin of the seal,
Hmm.
and with all that fat lining it. And they stuffed it with birds and tied it up and put it under a rock or something, let it ferment for a year, and then
Yeah.
they ate the birds.
High meat.
Yes, high meat, high fat.
Yeah, we've explored that a little bit here on the channel. I'm actually a big fan of fermented meats. Would have never thought that that would become a major part of the diet, but I love it. Is that something you've experimented much with?
I haven't done a lot of fermented meats. I like my favorite food is fermented milk. It's called cheese.
Yeah, I don't think my kids, that's their ultimate favorite food is cheese. They'll eat cheese all
And
day.
cheese is a great food for growing children. People give them Cheerios or chips or whatever. And why not just give them little squares of cheese? I mean, it's filling, it's nourishing, it's a complete food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So you make your own cheese.
Yeah, we have a farm. We have a dairy herd and we make raw cheese. And a few years ago, I was able to get a permit to sell raw milk labeled as pet milk.
There you go.
So I'm the
Is there a
crazy lady
way?
here. Hmm?
Is there a way that people in the U.S., people in the audience, might be able to procure some of your cheese or milk?
Well, if they live in Maryland, please come to the farm. If you just Google Sally Fallon Farm, you'll find it.
Nice.
It's called PA Bowen Farmstead, and we do sell the full wheels of cheese. We'll ship them, but I'm not sure we would do it right now because our stock is very low. But
Yeah.
in the fall, we have lots of cheese.
Nice. Yeah, there's always high demand for good raw cheese. I don't think there's a.
Yeah,
I don't think there's ever going to
we
be.
tested our cheese and some other raw cheese from Ireland, and it was really off the charts for vitamin K.
Oh, nice. So you've done some testing. What about vitamin D? You get some good vitamin D levels in
I
that too.
haven't tested vitamin D in our cheese, but I'm sure it's there.
Nice. Nice. Now, how important do you think the A1 versus A2 dairy issue is? This is something that it's always in the back of my mind. You think you guys have Jersey cows up there, right?
Yes.
So
Hmm.
Jersey cows, brown Swiss versus Holstein. Holstein being A1 casein, Jersey and brown Swiss being A2 casein. Is this something that you're concerned with?
We haven't really tested our cows. I think as long as cows are grass fed and the milk is raw, you'll probably do okay. If you are super, super sensitive, then you might want to get tested A2 milk. But I read something interesting recently. This is supposed to be a genetic thing, A1 or A2, but it's actually apparently determined by the feed. So if you get
Wow.
a couple generations of grass fed cows, they'll be A2.
Well, that's really interesting because I don't notice a difference if I drink Holstein milk versus brown Swiss milk. Brown Swiss usually yields a little bit more cream, so I would rather
Yeah,
have that.
right.
That's really interesting. It lines up with my experience too. Um, cool. So, as far as nutrition for fertility, it seems like nutrition for growing children might be very similar, right? The same nutrients you need to grow a baby in a
Yeah.
mother's womb. So let's talk a little bit about weaning children after breastfeeding. I know you talk a lot about the importance of breastfeeding in the Weston A. Price Foundation work. How important are the first foods, and what types of foods are you keen to promote introducing first into a child's diet?
Exactly. So by 6 months, the baby should be introduced to some solid food. I know there's a big trend towards exclusive breastfeeding for the first year,
Hmm.
but no traditional culture does this. In fact, some traditional cultures introduce food at 1 month. So it's not what you think. They start introducing the foods certainly by 6 months, and no traditional culture exclusively breastfeeds for a year. They may breastfeed for a long time, but it's not exclusive breastfeeding. Now, the typical first foods, almost always it's liver, and the mother chews the liver and then gives it to the baby. And I find this fascinating because liver, when you do food analyses, liver is the most nutrient dense food on the planet. And that's what they're giving to these babies, 4 to 6 months, and that's what we should give to our babies. Unfortunately, the foods that are recommended, well, for a long time it was rice cereal,
Ooh.
and then the very embarrassing discovery that rice cereal was full of arsenic. So,
Oopsie.
yeah, whoops, yeah. And now, if you hunt around on the American Academy of Pediatrics website, you have to hunt for this, but they do admit that the best weaning food is meat. And of course, I would include liver in this. So, you make a little a puree, a liver, a pate, puree of liver, add salt to it. Babies need this salt, and then also the egg yolk, not the whites because they might be allergenic, but the
Hmm.
egg yolk. So it's liver and egg yolks, first foods, highly digestible, nutrient dense, and gets them off to a really great start. And then you gradually add other foods, pureed meats. You can do pureed fruits, pureed vegetables. Always add butter to these, broth, soups, and so forth. You wait till at least a year for the grains because they are much harder to digest, and the grains should be soaked and cooked, as we teach people to do. And certain foods like egg whites and raw honey, you would want to wait till a year also.
Okay, yeah, and the honey, was it because of the risk of, was it botulism or something that's in some honey?
Botulism, yes, right.
Okay.
But you go from the easiest to digest to the hardest to digest. And babies can digest protein, they can digest fats. It's the carbs that are hard for them,
Yeah,
the grains.
and it's a shame because the first food some people are introducing are the, oatmeal and rice.
Or rice cakes, which are extremely hard to digest, or they're getting squash and fruit in those packages, applesauce. So lots and lots of carbs. We're
Mm-hmm.
starting our babies off with almost pure carbs, and then they cry a lot because they have low blood sugar. You'd cry too if that's all you were getting to eat. So,
Right.
um, we what we're doing to our babies is just horrible, and mothers just have no idea how to feed them. It comes in a tinfoil lined or plastic packages.
Mm.
This food, I mean, it
Right, so you
is
got the
just
phytoestrogen
garbage.
compounds right there, the gender bending compounds that they're ingesting, plus the aluminum, which is very bad for brain health and neurocognitive
Yes.
development.
Yeah. you know, Moms, you need to make your babies food. You're not going to find nutritious food out there. And I'm sorry if you're not willing to do this, or if you're not willing to pay for somebody to do this, then maybe you should be having babies because you're just bringing a very children that are going to suffer a lot into the world.
So your kids were raised kind of on your lifestyle and diet recommendations, weren't they?
Well, kind of. I was learning, and a big mistake I made with my first child was I gave her brown rice. I was into, whole grains, all this,
Okay.
and rice cakes when she was very young, and she ended up being unable to. She can't. She's gluten intolerant now. She
Mm.
just cannot handle gluten, and it's my fault because I fed her these rough grains when it was too young. Now with my boys, they came along later. I'd kind of figured a little bit of this out, and I didn't introduce the grains until later, and they don't have any trouble with grain.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of this gluten intolerance is, I mean, my own experience tells me that this is coming from introducing these grains too soon.
Yeah. So, and what is it in the grains? I mean, we talk a lot about. I mean, you see the whole carnivore movement. I'm sure online, a lot of people are now getting interested in anti nutrients, and I think it's cool that you were talking about the anti nutrients 10, 15 years ago. I mean, you were talking about it before.
We were talking. We were talking about anti-nutrients before anti-nutrients were cool, right?
Right? You
Okay.
did it before it was cool. And you took a really interesting route. Instead of saying, let's avoid all these plants, you said, well, let's look at the specific preparation necessary to make these plants bioavailable and
Yeah.
digestible. So let's talk a little bit about that. What methods? Well, first let's talk about the anti-nutrients and what they're really
Okay.
doing in the body, and then how do we get rid of them if we can?
Okay. So a seed has a kind of coating around it, which is like a plastic coating of preservatives to keep everything in that seed viable until it sprouts. Okay. So these include enzyme inhibitors and phytic acid, lectins, all sorts of things that are really irritating to the gut, or like enzyme inhibitors just will inhibit your own enzymes. You don't want to do that. And phytic acid blocks minerals. Sorry.
Someone calling for some cheese.
I'm sorry. No, no. It's going sorry.
It's not a problem. Not a problem.
You can edit this out, right?
Well, we just run it. It's fine. It's not a big deal. It's
Okay, okay.
yeah.
Anyway, where was I?
You're talking about
So
anti-nutrients,
the
phytic acid, some of these things that are in
phytic
seeds and
acid
plants.
blocks minerals, and if you just eat a grain like granola or a quick rice bread or oatmeal that you just cook in the morning or breakfast cereals,
Mm.
um, you're going to get all of these anti-nutrients, and they're going to be hard to digest. The grains will be hard to digest. They will actually be a negative nutrition because they're blocking the minerals, and they're very irritating. So all traditional people took great care to properly prepare their grains so that they neutralize these anti-nutrients. That means soaking them, kind of fermenting them. So all these things break down, and this helps break down the gluten as well. And in the case of bread, you want a very slow rise sourdough bread. So it's warm, long time, and that neutralizes all of these irritants. And there was a very interesting, there have been several interesting studies in Italy where celiac disease is an epidemic, by the way, with people diagnosed as celiac, and they fed them genuine sourdough bread, and they had no trouble eating that bread. No reaction. Okay, you're muted for me, so I can't hear you
Oh,
now.
sorry. I was going to say I got quite a few friends who've had experientially the same thing shown to them that they can eat the sourdough, they can eat it if it's fermented, but if it's just the straight white bread or whole grains, they can't handle it.
Even worse is the whole grain bread.
Mm.
And a lot of times they're adding gluten to these breads. If I eat a piece of bread with added gluten, I have a very bad day, a really bad day. I feel just horrible.
Yeah.
So you have to be extremely careful, read labels. The Weston A. Price Foundation publishes a shopping guide, which names brand names. What are the good breads? Where to get the sourdough bread? Where to get the raw butter? Where to get the, good meats? It's all
Nice.
there.
Awesome. Awesome. So it seems like most of these anti-nutrients are in one specific kingdom of foods, and that's the plant foods. And we're not seeing these anti-nutrients present in animal foods.
That's exactly right. The only thing I would say, maybe shellfish. There are compounds in shellfish that are anti-nutrients for some people.
Ah, okay.
And, there are people who cannot eat shellfish.
Yeah.
It would kill them. So I think, but yes, the things that are anti-nutrients for everybody are in the plant foods.
Yeah.
I'm not saying not eat plant foods, that, but you just have to be careful. Another one, I have to almost laugh if it weren't so sad, is all this kale that people are eating. Okay,
Kale's
so
the new
kale
beef.
has
I
a
thought you
lot
knew
of,
kale was the new beef.
yeah, kale is the new whatever. New, so kale is very hard to digest.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a lot of oxalic acid in it. It's got goitrogens in it, and kale needs to be cooked a long time and cooked, with a fat. That's how they prepare the greens, with fat. So you chop up the kale, you cook it a long time with, lard or pig fat or something, and then it's safe to eat. But what are we seeing? We're seeing kale chips, and even worse are the juices made out of kale.
The green juices. Not a fan, huh?
I'm not a fan of green juices. And I like to say, in our diet, you don't have to do any juices.
There you go.
Isn't that good news?
Yeah, simplify
What you
the
do is
kitchen
soup.
equipment.
Yeah, you do soups. You make bone broth. You make
Hmm.
broth from chicken feet or pig's feet or beef bones or whatever, and you put that in soups.
Nice, nice. So, what about spinach? I mean, you mentioned oxalic acid. This is another one of these really highly popular foods. Everyone thinks it's a health food, and it's very, very rich in calcium on paper. But then you look at the oxalic acid content, and the formation of calcium oxalate kidney stones being an issue with a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, I have a friend, William Shaw, who tells me the story of a guy who decides he eats junk food, okay?
Hmm.
He decides he's going to start being healthy, and he starts ordering spinach salads in the
Uh-oh.
restaurants, and he ends up with a kidney stone or arthritis or something because
Yeah.
he's eating all this raw spinach. So, spinach needs to be cooked. There's no question.
Because we're seeing this epidemic
Cooked or
now of people
buttered.
with
Yeah.
food sensitivities seem to be an epidemic these days. We've got a lot
Yes.
of people coming from vegan, vegetarian diets or standard American diet, and they're doing elimination diets like GAPS, or they're following principles like the Weston A. Price Foundation lays out. And a lot of people find themselves stuck at the GAPS level of right before vegetable introduction. And every time they introduce more vegetables, they're like, nah,
Yeah.
I'm not feeling it. And
They
they go right back to meat.
get sick. And so they're doomed to this very limited diet. And I think one of the things about my book, Nourishing Traditions, and also the Weston A. Price Foundations, from the very beginning, we have emphasized digestibility.
Mm,
So you prepare your grains and your vegetables so they're digestible. We often recommend fermented foods or something like Swedish bitters with your meals to digest the fats. And again, with the proteins, you don't want to overcook your proteins, or in the case of milk, not cook them at all,
mm.
so they're more digestible. So everything we eat, we need to think about. Now, it's one thing putting it in our bodies, but another thing making sure we digest it.
Yeah, yeah. If it's just passing out the back end, it's probably not going to do too much good. So what do you think about all the people doing a carnivorous diet? A lot of people are finding the very low fiber approach is suitable for them. I don't know what it is, but there seem to be a lot of people coming from the plant-based diets, and they find that a more carnivorous approach, at least for a few months, gives their gut some time to recover. What do you think about these
Could
diets, and,
be.
and how would you recommend people go about reintroducing some more, digestible plant foods and properly prepared plant foods?
Well, I would start making broth. And I think one thing that my husband and I do, we always have a slow cooker with broth
Mm,
on. And we have soup every day for lunch. So we have broth every day. And my husband's 92. He still works on a tractor, still sees clients.
wow,
I'm just over 70 and I
wow.
work 26 hours a day. So I think that's just number one. It helps your digestion. It gives you good collagen. And then number two, when you do eat meats, you need to eat meats with the fat. And most people, they jump into this carnivorous diet. They're eating all these lean steaks. Yeah. I like the fact that your little logo shows the fat,
Yeah, yeah.
the
That's
white
what we
fat.
made. Here, I'll,
Yeah.
I'll pull it up again for the audience to see. We need the fat on there. The fat's the most important part.
But I find people want to have a picture. So there was a group that was doing a healthy fats week, and they sent me the picture, and I said, but there's no fat in this picture. It was just lean meat and a piece of cheese, sort of white piece of cheese. I don't know. And they said, well, it's really hard to find pictures of meat with fat on them, and it's true. Or I've had people do, they say, Sally's going to be on the radio. Let's do a little collage. And I see a piece of salmon, maybe an egg, and some almonds. And I say, wait a minute. That's not what I mean. Where's the butter?
Yeah.
But people are afraid of butter. So,
You know what I had today, Sally? Have you ever had donkey fat?
no. Was it good?
It's amazing. I wish
Really?
if my wife was in the other room, I'd tell her to bring some up to show you. Actually, hold on. I'll show you some in a minute. Let me holler at my wife. It's the texture of it is so strange. It's so soft and it melts like butter. Um,
Really?
it's one of the weirdest fats
Huh.
I've ever had, and it's a hindgut fermenter, right? It's not a ruminant, uh,
Yes.
and there's so much fat on this animal. Here, the like beef fat and sheep fat are relatively affordable, but the donkey fat is especially sought after for some reason. It is just so
Oh,
soft. Yeah, it's really really good. I mean, the taste of it is it's buttery. You can eat it raw without cooking it. It kind of melts in your mouth, and you can make cracklings from it
I'd
and other
love
stuff.
to get. Can you send us a sample so we
I
can
wish I
test
could
it?
just well maybe next time I fly to the States I'll bring you a glob, but it would be so cool to test this for vitamin K, vitamin D, vitamin A.
Absolutely. Well, we tested bear fat,
This is what
and
it looks like. This is not rendered, is it, Jessica? Oh, this is rendered. So
it's yellow.
it's liquid
Wow, it
at
looks.
room temperature. It's so yellow. They use this as a medicine here, and they charge. All
Yeah.
right, so just for 50 cents a pound to 75 cents a pound for beef suet.
No, less, she said.
Sometimes less, sometimes 25 cents if you go to the right person. But in this stuff, per pound, they want $8 for the unrendered fat. So that's what it looks like unrendered, the
Oh.
donkey fat. And
It's almost fishy.
see how it kind of looks like lard, almost like pig fat?
Yeah, it does look like lard.
And it's so good,
How
Sally.
does it smell?
I'm sorry, what was
How does it smell? What does it smell like?
that? Beef fat mixed with butter, I'd say. Yeah. Like it doesn't have that. Go ahead.
It's fishy. Like there's almost like you can taste the DHA.
Yeah, almost fishy, Jessica says. She thinks there's a little bit, maybe some more DHA and EPA in it.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah,
impressed.
because they're not a ruminant animal, so they wouldn't completely hydrolyze all of the fat. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's one of the weirdest fats. I wish we didn't have the worst postal system in the world because I'd send you some. I'd try to get some tested, but maybe one day we can test some of this somehow. But it's great. They use that one. They use the angelote still. You still get these angelote eggs in the markets that they send to
And
the
they're
coast.
dried, right?
They're dried, yeah. It just looks like a sweet potato mixed with a cow's testicle or something weird. It's really strange. You have an egg? We might have
I'd
one.
love to see them.
Yeah, we'll bring one up and show you too.
And how do you eat them? Do you give them to your children?
Our kids begged us for the angelote eggs every single day for a while. And we thought they would eat too much. We are like, back off, just relax. But now they don't ask for it anymore. They went through a period where they really wanted it, and they craved it, and then they stopped. So it kind of just sits in the cupboard right now. With the donkey fat and with other animal fats, we'll eat it with steak, or we'll have broth, slow cooked meat. They like milk. They drink a lot of milk. All right,
Yeah.
so here
Yeah,
she goes.
my grandsons are real milk drinkers.
So this is the angelote.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's like and that's the unfertilized egg from the skate-like creature. The green part, that's just plastic from how it was hanging up in the market. But this stuff is, and they smell a little bit like ammonia, a little slight ammonia
Uh-huh.
smell. Here's an open one. You crack it open, and it's just,
They're super hard.
yeah. Here, I'll give you yeah, really, really hard. But yeah, you just,
And they taste fishy or
yeah, fishy. I'd say like dried fish. That's as
and
close as
in
I can.
Europe, they have something similar and they shave it and put it on pasta. Yeah.
Yeah, this outer, see
Yeah.
that membrane right there almost looks like umbilical cord.
Yes.
Yeah, that you just
Yes.
peel that off, and the inside is this orange stuff. But it's funny, these are the foods that, the Weston Price observed them using. They've probably been using these here for thousands of years. We get told, oh, that's dangerous. Animal fat, it's going to make your body acidic. It's going to do all sorts of havoc in your body. Yet, our kids love it. They're in perfect health, and we eat this stuff all the time and feel better for it. So it's,
These children brought up on the Weston Price diet are the hope of the future. Their parents tend not to vaccinate. They don't need to vaccinate because they're so healthy and, have such good immune systems. They're well nourished, no toxins in them, good functioning brains. Because I get so depressed sometimes about what's happening in this world. But
yeah, it's
these
hard not to.
children, pardon me, it's hard not to. But these children are our hope when they become adults, that they will have the courage and the wisdom to get things right again. We've left them a big job, but
Yeah.
at least we've given them the right kind of nutrition.
Yeah, and if we can teach them how to, pass these on to their children, there is some hope,
Yes,
right? But if we
exactly.
just allow them
Yeah.
to be trained into this kind of like technocratic food system, it's hard to imagine a good outcome, at least for a few generations, while people are getting further down the rabbit hole of all this kind of, the degenerate food supply.
I was reading about Bezos, who owns
Yeah.
Amazon, and he's investing in some kind of genetic stuff for prolonging life. And they're investing in ways to make these designer babies, really expensive genetic manipulation to make healthy designer babies.
CRISPR babies.
And I feel like, yeah, Christopher, I feel like saying, you know what? You're in Kansas already. You just don't know it. You're here in Kansas.
So
We've
crazy.
got everything we need to make healthy babies, and not expensively either. We don't have to go through all this science and manipulation and so forth. It's
Right.
right here, right for the taking.
Absolutely. It's like, why do you think you're attracted to certain qualities that represent health, right? A healthy glow in the skin, right? You look at somebody's
Yes,
parents
and
and
straight teeth and
yeah,
wide face, yeah,
right.
and robust, good muscles,
Yeah.
nice body, tall, strong. That's what good nutrition does, and it is not genetic. It is nutritional. And I always say, personally, I don't believe there's any such thing as a genetic defect. The
Hmm.
defect is in it's the epigenetics, and the defect is us not eating, the way we're supposed to eat
Right. Not expressing the genes correctly. Yeah, it's interesting you
correctly.
mentioned Bezos because he owns Whole Foods now. I mean, even
I
the
know.
health food sector is kind of quickly getting absorbed under the behemoth of this.
Fortunately, yes, yes, yeah.
And the
Uh,
same
I mean,
technology.
I don't have a Whole Foods out here where we live, but in Washington, when we lived there was plenty of them. And it's hard to find even organic bread there. The butcher has all the fat cut off. The fish is previously frozen, so they're just taking all these shortcuts.
So, what do you think about the freezing milk or meats? Does this degrade some of the nutrient value?
Freezing is okay. It's even okay for milk.
Hmm.
The enzymes are preserved. It's okay for meat. It's a perfectly fine way of preserving things.
Cool. I noticed that
It's
with
other
meat, if I leave the meat in the freezer for a few months, after a long time frozen, it just doesn't taste as good. But a few days frozen, there's a difference, right? Do you notice that?
I haven't noticed that so much. I cook with a lot of spices, so
Cool.
but we couldn't. We'd have to hunt every day if we didn't do this. And
Yeah.
what did they do before? They preserved by smoking or salting.
Yeah. Or fermentation.
I'm not sure that or fermentation. Yeah. So I mean, you've always had to preserve meat in some way.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Nice. So, animal foods, as far as fertility, absolutely crucial for growing children. Crucial. What about like menopause? What about as we age? A lot of women start getting hormonal issues as they age. We get a lot of clients coming to us who are at kind of the late 40s, mid 50s, starting to go through the menopause. What are some things we can do nutritionally to benefit our body as we're aging?
Well, I often say menopause is when your bad habits catch up with you
Uh-oh.
because what happens in menopause? You stop producing estrogen in the ovaries, and so something else has got to produce estrogen for you, and that's the adrenal glands. And that's why you also gain weight in menopause because the fat around the midriff produces estrogen too, and stem cells for repair. So if you have been drinking a lot of coffee, eating a lot of sugar, even just a lifestyle that's been very hard on your adrenal glands, they're not going to be able to step up to the mark and take over for the ovaries. And you're not going to feel good. Personally, to me, menopause is liberation, absolute liberation. You're not menstruating anymore. Um, you gain a little weight. My back hurt all the time until I went through menopause, and then it never hurt again
Wow.
because I gained some weight.
That's another
So
thing. People forget. Everyone wants to be so lean. Even like as a man, I don't like when I get super lean. I don't feel so good. There's a certain amount of body fat that I think is required for us to function optimally.
right, and if you get too lean, and usually the women get much heavier, and the men get too lean. As you get older, they get
Mm.
too skinny and frail. But when you look at pictures of traditional cultures, the elder women were a little bit heavy.
Hmm.
That's just absolutely normal. Now, it's not normal to become obese and to gain lots of weight, but it is normal to gain some weight, especially in the midriff, to get stronger bones. Um, you know, it keeps you from being frail and from getting old looking and wrinkled.
Well, what happens if you get a viral infection and you're so lean, right? You get a viral infection and you're
Exactly.
10% body fat as a man and you're 70 years old. Are you gonna survive that? I mean, it doesn't seem very likely that you're gonna be healthy with two.
Actually, there's studies on this. People who've been in accidents or gone through surgery, the ones who do the best are the ones who are categorized as overweight.
Hmm.
The ones who do the worst are the ones categorized as thin or obese. But the overweight do the best when there is trauma,
Interesting.
because what's in that fat? Um, hormone production and also stem cells. We used to think that all the stem cells we would ever have would came when we were born. Now we know that the fat makes stem cells. And what do the stem cells do? They repair. They're there to become heart cells or lung cells or whatever you need for repair.
So that makes sense why a lot of people when they go through a like an emotional or spiritual crisis, they have this healing crisis. Oftentimes people gain weight after a traumatic experience. As part of the
Yes,
healing,
yes,
it would make sense that.
it's part of the healing. Yeah.
Hmm.
Of course, you don't want to gain too much weight.
Right.
I mean, I always say two dress sizes. So you go from an 8 to a 12 or a 10 to a 14. That's normal. You don't want to go from a 10 to a 26.
This got to be the
But it
first
is
time I've
normal.
ever heard somebody describe menopause as liberating. I mean, you just get so many women, they're afraid of it. They start freaking out at the minor symptoms that are not even premenopause symptoms yet, and they get so freaked out by it. But it seems like your message is, hey, don't worry about it. If you do it right, it can be a great experience.
Well, you're going to have problems if you have weak adrenal glands. You're going to have
Mm.
the hot flashes, you're going to have problems. And that's why I say your bad habits catch up with you. But I think even if you have abused your adrenal glands earlier, if you get on our diet, it shouldn't be a problem.
And
And just think, you don't have to worry about getting pregnant. That's that's a huge liberating event.
well, I mean, you could just go on a vegan diet and you don't have to worry about it either.
Right, right, right.
No, I'm kidding. So, what are some foods that one might want to include? Would it look similar to preconception diet, a menopause?
It would definitely look similar. It's the same kind of diet. I think as you get older, you have to put more attention on digestibility.
Hmm.
So that's more broth, more fermented foods, more careful preparation of your grains. You have lost that digestive fire that you had when you were young. Young people can eat anything, so they say.
Yeah.
But as you get older, you definitely need to have more attention to that. 70% of our energy in our bodies goes towards digestion. 70%. So even if you can improve that by 5%, you've increased the amount of energy you have for other things by quite a bit.
Hmm. Yeah. So, what are some foods to avoid as far as digestibility, assimilability goes? We talked a lot about the foods to include. What kind of stuff should we keep
Well,
out?
well, number one, absolute number one, industrial seed oils and all the foods made with them. So no margarine, no spreads, no foods that contain corn oil, soybean oil, canola oil, no bottled dressings. You make your own dressing with olive oil. That's just, to me, it's just number one.
Mm.
Number two, refined sweeteners. And we don't say you can't have sweet things. You have a sweet taste in your mouth. You need to satisfy that sweet taste. But make your own desserts with natural sweeteners. So those two, I would say, really rough grains, improperly prepared grains, granola, breakfast cereals. These are going to make you really sick. And then just processed food in general, especially processed food that contains MSG. MSG is a real bad thing in the food supply and affects the hypothalamus, which is the master gland,
Okay.
controlling everything else. So, and it doesn't mean your diet has to be fancy. We have either eggs and bacon or oatmeal for breakfast. We just alternate. Very easy foods. There's nothing hard about it. We do make soup. We make big pots of soup and freeze it. So we always have soup for lunch. I usually have some cheese. My husband likes sardines. We have some sourdough bread with lots of butter. That's lunch for us. It's easy, simple.
So
And I do
the
cook for
grains
dinner.
you recommend seem to be sourdough, fermented oats.
Yes.
How do you go about
Yeah.
fermenting the oats? How can people make oats more bioavailable?
Okay. Yeah. You soak the oats in warm water and something acidic like a tablespoon of vinegar, lemon juice, or whey or yogurt overnight. And then that ferments overnight. And then you cook them in more water and salt the next day.
Okay.
I used to think that I was allergic to oats if I ate oatmeal that had been cooked that morning. By mid morning, I would have something like toxic shock where I'd become
Goodness.
dizzy
Yeah.
and I'd break out in a sweat and I'd have this horrible, horrible digestive cramps.
Yeah.
And once I learned to make the oats by soaking them, and of course I eat them with lots of butter, oatmeal with lots of butter. I have no problem at all with the oats, and I can actually go just as long on a bowl of soaked oatmeal as I can on a breakfast of bacon and eggs.
Interesting. Interesting. Because I mean, a lot of people talk about the anti-nutrient contents in some of these foods, but how does the fermentation and the soaking affect that? What does it actually do?
Well, it gets rid of them and it liberates the minerals. It makes everything much more digestible and available.
Okay. What a
And you have a nice carbohydrate breakfast with lots of butter on it. And so, people, there's a reason people like carbs because they're nice to eat. So just prepare them right and you'll be fine.
There you go.
And then just going on to dinner, we raise all our own meat here on the farm. So we have either chicken or pork or beef with several vegetables usually cooked and butter, lots of butter and often rice or brown rice or potatoes. It's just typical American dinner and often seafood if we can get it.
What type of seafood? You focus on shellfish or you focus more on fish?
Well, my husband is the oyster and mussel eater, and those are two seafoods I don't like. I like shrimp, so we kind of go back and forth, and then fish, of course. We have a pond; we catch fish in our pond. So
There you go. So your husband, you mentioned he's over 90, right? Did you say 92?
yeah, 92.
Wow, that's so cool. And he's still working on a tractor.
Still works on the tractor. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, um, you've dropped so much knowledge here, and you've dropped so much knowledge over the last 20 years with the Weston A. Price Foundation with your work. Where can people find more of your stuff, Sally Fallon Morell?
Okay. Okay. So my books are all on Amazon, including my latest book, which is called Nourishing Diets, which you might want to have a look at, which is about healthy diets or traditional diets from all over the world. So that's Nourishing Diets. All those you can get in online booksellers. My blog is nourishingtraditions.com. And I'm pretty out there on that blog. I like to get people riled up a little bit.
Good.
And then the Weston A. Price Foundation is westonaprice.org. And if you're members, you get our journal and all of our literature. You help support our movement. And then the last one would be realmilk.com, which tells you where you can find real milk. So I really would like you to send me information about Ecuador.
Yeah, I will. I will. We'll talk after this, and you can tell me exactly what type of information I could provide, and we can help out because it's a funny world out here. It's great. You go to your neighbor, and your neighbor's got a cow, and you buy some milk. It's
Yeah.
as simple as that in most places. In the cities, it can be a little bit more difficult, but it's a very different food supply here than you see in the U.S. Still a lot of pesticides and stuff, but as far as the animal foods, very, very affordable and very good quality.
Wonderful, wonderful. And of course, the fats and the organ meats contain the nutrients that protect you against the pesticides.
There you go. There you go. So the vitamin A, you mentioned the importance of vitamin A. I think that's a crucial one for any expecting parents out there, any mothers or any women who are thinking about getting pregnant, which if you're a young woman, maybe you should focus on something like that if you want to live a long, fulfilling life. Family, big important part of life here. And as we say here, eat meat and make families. We know that animal foods are the most important foods
Oh, is
for
that what they
fertility.
say?
That's what we say on the show. I got the eat meat, make family shirt. You
Oh, I see. I
know.
see. Yeah, it's backwards.
Yeah, no, we've got.
You need a shirt with it backwards for you to be on the show.
Yeah, well, I meant I should I flipped my got my little virtual cam, and now it should be
Yeah.
forwards, right? I didn't know it was backwards.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
I'm sorry, you were suffering through the backwards screen the whole time. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it's been great talking. Sally Fallon Morell, it's an
Thank
honor to
you.
meet you, and I really, really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the work you've done. You've helped millions of people, you've helped millions of children to be properly nourished, and I really appreciate you speaking out unabashedly about what you're passionate about and not having fear of being labeled a heretic or an extremist, because it's really important that we speak the truth, and you are embodying it and living it. You're a living example. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. That was great.
All right. We're out of here. You guys can find more at primaledgehealth.com. See you guys next time.